Welcome, Queen Amina. Welcome, Dr. Kumar. I'll tag you, Dr. Kumar, and
Yes.
I will tag you on Facebook so the live will be on your page if you could
Okay,
accept
thank
it.
you. Yes, very good.
And Amina, yourself as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you back to our weekly webinar, Your Story, A Mercy to Humanity. My name is Habib Ali. I'm your host this evening. We have been blessed to interview several personalities around the world to inspire us during this pandemic. And tonight we are honored to have our main guest, all the way from Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Kumar Mahabir, an anthropologist and professor, and his research is on the East Indians and the Caribbean. And of course, I've been working with Queen Amina on the Vigor Awards. I've met her since last year, the Vigor Awards, and she has an amazing story behind the Vigor Awards. This year, she is doing it virtually, and it's on about the unsung heroes during the crisis. So we'll be talking to her as before our headliner. And I just want to explain that Wahida Valiante could not make it this evening. She's ended up with some issues. This time it was her computer and her health. So we are very grateful that we have been able to call Trinidad and Tobago and get no one better than Dr. Kumar Mahabir to join us this evening. So Queen Amina, last week we met you in Toronto, and today you're somewhere in another part of the world. How have you been?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm very well. Thank God for life. Thank God we are counted among the living. And yeah, it's a beautiful day.
And you have a beautiful dress to match that beautiful background you're having there today. Which part of the Ontario are today?
I am I'm in Toronto, but not the Toronto city. We call all the GTA Toronto. I'm in Mississauga right
now. So the last time I met you, I was in Windsor, and I know you're from Calgary. Tonight we have a few minutes with yourself. We would love to hear your story. How did you come up with the Vigor Awards, and why you're naming the theme this year, the unsung heroes during the crisis?
Well, Vigor Award was given birth to from my own personal experience. In life today, gratitude is a word that has been thrown out the window. A lot of people are no longer grateful for the little things that people do. I had a cosmetic surgery to straighten a hammer toe because I was wearing too much shoes, and I started developing a hammer toe. When I went to the doctor had told me to have my surgery done one foot at a time. And I said, no, I want to do it both feet at the same time because of the recovery time that he had told me. Instead of staying 1 month in bed for one foot and then another month, I said, no, do both together so I heal within 30 days. So at that point, I didn't know the consequences of what I was getting myself into. So after the surgery, I now realized, I can't drive because both legs are in cast. I can't walk, I can't drive, I can't do anything for the next 30 days. And my husband then was on a business trip away in Africa. And while I was in bed, recovering, me and my children used to volunteer downtown Calgary. At, at of that time when they were little, we volunteer. We bring sandwiches to the homeless people at the homeless shelter there, and we provide music every Sunday. So while we were doing that, I didn't know that I was building for something that I'm going to need help with in the future. So when I was in bed, the my church members and the people in the homeless shelter heard about me being in a recovery bed at home, and they started sending people to my home to come and help me daily. So they would do everything from cleaning to cooking to bed bathing me and helping my children get to school and all of that stuff. So one night I was asking God and I said, how am I ever going to say thank you to these people that are helping me? And I want to say thank you, but I want the world to know that somebody like these people exists, helping you selflessly without asking for anything in return. And that's how I got the inspiration, because as an actress with my background, I've been on many, many red carpet. But those days that I was going on those red carpet was actually a training for me not to celebrate myself, but to celebrate others in like manner. So when I got the inspiration, I decided I was going to celebrate the everyday ordinary people doing extraordinary things to bless other people without asking for anything in return. And that's how Vigor Award was given birth to, 2011.
Wow. So from helping the homeless to getting hamstrung at home to walking the red carpet today, after how many years? 8 years. You continue to do Vigor Awards to recognize and share the story, and of course show gratitude to those heroes, heroine and heroes around the world, including Canada. Now you have traveled from Calgary to Windsor to Toronto to Nigeria to the whole world. You've been Tanzania, the Caribbean. Tell us what it is like. Give us a story, for example, that has really inspired you during this pandemic, and maybe one of those people are getting an award. Hint in this virtual Vigor Awards this December the 6th, because I want people to listen to this and come out and buy tickets and support the awardees, support Queen Amina. There's a lot of, it's quite an expense of an undertaking. And of course, to show gratitude to those who are the unsung heroes, as well as yourself, Queen Amina, and your team.
Well, thank you so much, Habib. I did not say thank you from the beginning for inviting
No,
me.
thank you. We have to thank you, Amina.
Thank you. I would start with you. And that's not because I am on this show. It's because it's real and it's genuine. When I met you, I heard your story last year at the Vigor Award. For where you were and what you let go to start feeding the needy, for me, that is a heart of gold that needs to be celebrated. That is you in Canada. Last year also, earlier this year actually, before the pandemic, I was in Tanzania. I was privileged to go to Tanzania with a friend, Miriam. And when we got to Tanzania, I met this lady, Mama Zara. Every Tanzanian call her Mama Zara. And what this lady does is she picks the young people from the street, groom them up, give them a job in her company. Her motto is no one gets left behind. She gives them a job, she gives them houses, she trains them to become whatever they want to become, and then she releases them to the universe to go and live a life that they have wished to live. She had a 1,500 employee of youth in her place. Then she took us to a place where there have never been any school, in the middle of nowhere. The youth, the children there, they grow up just to become cattle rearers. That's their future. That's their hope. It's already designed. It ends there. She brought school there so that these children will be able to have hope. The Maasai children. She brought school there so that they'll be able to see the light of the universe, to be able to know what is happening outside that village where they are. For me, that is a heart of gold. So I travel around the world looking for people doing unique thing out of the ordinary. She could have built that school right in Zanzibar, where tourist people come through and rich people are there. They're going to put their children there to pay this tuition so she can make money. But she decided to put it in a village where she gets nothing. Rather, she is the one putting her money into it. So this is how I go around finding people from around the world. And this year, we're going to be bringing them together.
Well, that's
Talk of some.
incredible. Mama Zara, and I know Mariam Ali, she's very passionate about her work in Tanzania. And of course, you have actually captured the nugget of that, that Mama Zara is passionate about helping people without looking forward
That's
for
right.
the hype and for the returns. And maybe that's another Mother Teresa story.
That's
Queen
right.
Amina, we are happy to have you. On a parting word, what is your one word during this 2020, this year of the pandemic and the coronavirus? You have still lifted yourself and get up and do things that are meaningful to you. You have not given up the awards. You have not given up church. You have not given up your family. You have not given up your business. What is that word that you will leave with us today? Say 2020, this is the word.
So for 2020, the word for 2020 is never look around what is happening around you, but look within you what you can change to create the world around you.
Look within you what you can change and do not look around you. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, namaste, shalom, and shanti, and peace be each and every one of you. If you have just joined us on Facebook Live and YouTube, this is our weekly webinar, Your Story, A Mercy to Humanity. Queen Amina herself has a daily show, the Queen Amina Show, and she has interviewed me before. And I want to say that we are very grateful for her work and for her contribution here in Canada and around the world. Queen Amina, what is it about your show that has kept it going throughout the pandemic?
Well, we bring courage, empowerment, and hope to people, because today we have a very hopeless situation. When you look around you, that's why I said don't look around, because when you look around, it's very discouraging. There's no hope. It's very hopeless. On our show, we bring hope. We bring people that are living through this pandemic. There's a saying that my father always says, he said, generals are made during the war. So when there's a problem, don't look at the problem. Look at what you can do to become a solution to the problem. And that's why we kept our show going, because we find solutions through industry experts that will come and share experiences with you. We find trainers that would come and, like from mental health services, to come and talk to people that are going through some terrible mental health problems right now. We find experts from marriage services that, you know, a lot of homes are being broken because of this pandemic. Husband always go out to work. Now everybody is stuck at home. They're like, whoa, I didn't know who you are, and problems. So we bring solutions.
So you'll
we
have
bring
two
hope,
generals in this
power.
war. Lovely. Thank you, Amina. Thank you. Thank you for that. I know the Vigor Awards will be a success story. You have come up with a creative ideas to have the awardees being awarded virtually, but it will look as if they're actually on stage.
That's right.
So you have actually captured a new technology. And you know what I want to say as well is that this webinar, we have always entertained people from all walks of life, religion, gender, backgrounds. And today is unique because yourself being a Christian, myself a Muslim, and then we have Dr. Kumar from Trinidad as a Hindu, and we have people from all backgrounds. Look at the nexus, or look at the axis of love that is being created in this space right now, that regardless the humanity, the compassion, the mercy, the innovativeness, and of course the resilience and courage to go on during the pandemic is what has brought us together. And I'm sure that is what will take us forward. So again, thank you, Queen Amina, for being with us here tonight. And we hope to see you all fabulous on December the 6th. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, I'll be sharing the link with Vigor Awards. Kindly buy a ticket and support the cause December the 6th. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much, and very nice to meet you, Dr. Kumar, and to all the
Yes,
viewers.
it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
All
All
the
the
best.
viewers, please make sure you're supporting this weekly webinar. It's amazing. I've been following it. You've been bringing amazing speakers. Keep doing the great job, and God bless you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Queen Amina. Your host tonight is Habib Ali. And we have with us our headliner, Dr. Kumar Mahabir from Trinidad and Tobago. Trinbagian. Is that a Trinbagian?
Trinbagonian. Trin,
Trinbagonian.
yeah,
Trinbagonian. I have to really get that one. I've
yeah,
been to
yeah.
Trinidad so many times, I still haven't gotten that one. But what
Okay.
I would like to say is that I would like to begin by welcoming you and for you to tell us a little bit about your current position in Trinidad and Tobago with the university, with anthropology, with your research, and then we'll take it from there.
So I'm an anthropologist by practice, by training, by profession. I got my PhD in anthropology from the University of Florida, and I returned home because home is home. You feel home. You feel at home. At home. So I returned rather than remaining in the States and working and so on. This is where I want to spend the rest of my life. And I was teaching at the anthropology, among other courses, at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT. But in 2018, they had to downsize and restructure and so on. And I was one of the 79 people who was retrenched. And since then, the university is downsizing. So if you look at the news and so on, they have just a couple of weeks ago, they have closed 4 campuses. And again, they have been hit by the COVID and so on, with funds running low. Business, it's almost a world recession or depression. Businesses closing down. And we are really in a sorry state. But um, we must make the best of the situation. Whenever people throw lemons at us, we must make lemonade. And so I have taken this lockdown time during the COVID to do writing, which is what I love, which is my hobby, which is the love of my life. So every single day I write. And at the end of the COVID, I want to produce a journal, COVID diaries or something like that. A lot of people should do that because you're home, you're locked down. What do? You don't want to be a consumer all the time, just watching television and and sharing and reading WhatsApp messages and videos and so on. We got to produce something instead of just being a perpetual consumer. So out of the
Right.
COVID, I am writing, and I've also launched a show, a weekly show like yours on Sunday night. So it's a platform on which I want to bring the Indians in the diaspora, particularly Indians in the Caribbean diaspora, together on one platform on every Sunday night. So we have had about 25, 30 shows so far, programs, and we are still going strong. And it's a public meeting rather than a webinar, because in a public meeting, a Zoom meeting, you get more interaction. So it's going great, and like you too, we stream it live on Facebook, and we edit it and then upload it to YouTube, where it will be there lodged permanently for posterity as a research resource.
Yes. Could you tell us what was your childhood like growing up in Trinidad and Tobago that has inspired you to become who you are today? Maybe there's some stories around that time that you remember, some influencers that was in your life at that time. Could you share with us?
Right. So I grew up in the countryside. I grew up. I was born in 1955, or more than a half century ago. in a rural place called Plummeton, between Bish, the district of Bish and Manzalina. So my father had a liquor shop and we had a grocery. The building downstairs was divided into two parts, and we had cocoa and coffee fields or plantation. Of course, we plant rice and so on, and watermelons. So I grew up in that kind of environment in the village, countryside, without electricity, without running water, and so on. Very difficult life because as soon as it gets dark, you're going to have a lot of mosquitoes, and you have to get under a mosquito net or put on long sleeve shirts and long pants and so on. And we had gaslight and kerosene lamp and so on, and not much activity to do even during the day except to work in the land. But I was lucky; I was the last of seven, and I didn't get to do that hard work as my elder brothers and sisters did. So I would read a lot during the daytime and night, and I think it is what has shaped my writing career. I'm essentially a writer. I write every day, as I've said before, and I read. So that was nurtured during that time, growing up in the environment. And of course, there were children around. I would play with them and so on. But my parents didn't want me to mingle much with the kids my age because they had this dream and unrelenting ambition that we should be educated. So they said, yeah, you have to stay home and read your book and go to school and so on. Not to mix with those boys because most of the people were laborers, but we were a little better off in that we had a shop and so on. And we had a concrete house, which was one of the few concrete houses, brick houses at that time in Plummeter. So my parents had a vision, and so I loved reading. I indulged in reading at that age after helping them in the cocoa and coffee fields, sometime in the rice field, sometime in the watermelon field. But as I said before, I was spared from that rigor of working because I was the last child, and I developed my love for reading, and I always wanted to be a writer, which I am. And so from very young, from about 10, 11, 12, I knew what I wanted to become. And I was fortunate too to have an elder brother who was a teacher in a Presbyterian school. So there were books around and so on. And he would have inspired me. There are books around you want to read. And then I had a sister who was lucky to pass the common entrance. Now it's called the SEA. So she went to high school, and she would have books and so on. I would read the books that she would bring home. I remember some of my early books being 39 Steps. So I was much into literature, and there was The Basket of Flowers. That's another novel which came our way. We would buy the occasional newspaper. We had the radio. There are no television at that time.
Naipaul's novels.
Well, it's not. It was only later in life that I read Naipaul, Miguel Street, House of Mr. Biswas, which is the classic and so on. But remember, we were in the countryside, and it was whatever books that came our way that we would read. And I don't think even then that V.S. Knight, we were talking about 1960, and he would have published somewhere in 1962. So,
Right.
And even then, his books were not in the school curriculum. So we'd have to read English literature, as it was called, books by
What were
English
some of the other
authors.
writers in Trinidad that you read? Eric Williams, Wordsworth.
Well, I was more attracted to fiction, and that is why I books and so on. Those who eat the Cascadura being one of them. The Plains of Caroni being the other. I read a lot of his book, more his books than Naipaul. I don't know why, because probably these books came my way. But the book that still um, catches my attention, and I think it is a book that is not well known. It's a novel by a guy named Harold Sonny Ledoux, Ladw, and his novel is called No Pain Like This Body. It's widely read, but not in the Caribbean. It's not given the status that it should really achieve. So I was reading and writing and so on. I wanted to capture our way of life in the countryside and document it so it would be like a window to other people. I haven't written any work of fiction as yet. I have poems, manuscript, and I have some short stories which I'm going to publish someday. But I found myself writing more nonfiction than fiction.
Okay, tell us about your education. What was it like when you moved on from primary school to secondary school to university? What was that journey like?
Right. So in those days, there was only one high school in the town of San Grande, and I was from Plumita, which was 14 miles away. And 14 miles away, you're driving through lonely roads. Both sides have walls of trees, forested area. Not many cars, not many buses, and so on. Not many what we call maxi taxi. They were not in existence then. No train and so on. So there were only a few people in the primary school who passed the common entrance. Now it's changed to SEA. Um, Not because you were not bright or not intelligent, but it was a question of species. How many species were available in the high school, in the secondary school? And I was fortunate to be one of the three people at that time in the entire school who passed the common entrance, and that was my window of opportunity, which really changed my fate.
Wow.
So I went to the town in San Grande, Northeastern College, and it was so far away. 14 miles doesn't seem too far away now, but it was then, and I had to stay by relatives and so on to complete my O levels, GCE, Cambridge exam, um, O levels, and then I did A levels, and of course, naturally, I was inclined to literature. But and I also did my first degree in literature, but eventually I found myself doing anthropology without actually knowing the name. So anthropology found me. I was writing about life generally, people's way of life, not knowing there was a field called anthropology. And so I did my BA and MA, MPhil in MA in literature, and eventually I went to Florida to study. So I did my BA and MA in literature, and I went to Florida to do anthropology because that was not offered at the university in Trinidad. But if
So was that a scholarship to Florida? And how
no,
did you
no,
end up with studying the East
well,
Indians of the Caribbean?
that's a whole story itself. Well, about the East Indian part, if you look at the discourses and so on, which is the objective of my weekly platform, if you look at uh, uh, official discourses, if you look at mainstream culture, is marginalized. And carnival is a big thing in Trinidad, and Indian views and voices and so on are marginalized. So the platform I created, which is running now, is to give primacy to Indian views and Indian culture and so on, every dimension of Indian culture. So coming back to the earlier point about how did I reach to Florida? Well, I wanted to to study more, and I liked anthropology. So in those days, there was no computers and so on, no internet when I went to study University of Florida. So I would write letters. I went to the U.S. Embassy, and they had some books like directories and so on of universities in the United States. And just by destiny, I picked a few. One was University of Pennsylvania, which accepted me, by the way, to do folklore, but it was expensive, and I heard it was cold. And so I chose Florida because of the warm climate, like Trinidad and so on. And I was accepted to do anthropology. Now, I didn't have any money, and I was married with two children. So, sometimes you just have hope and faith and pray and God in your mind. And with my wife and two little kids, we went. I had money only for one semester. I ended up staying 6 years because when you are there, you get the grants, you get the scholarships. I was a teaching assistant, which helped me tremendously.
Wow, that's
So
incredible. You
yeah,
started off with like a blind faith and you ended up completing 6 years at university in
yeah,
Florida.
yes,
Incredible.
yeah,
Well, the saying is that when Dr. Walter Rodney got his opportunity to study his doctoral in England, he studied Black history.
yeah.
And Rupert Narayan got the same opportunity, but he did not study the Indian diaspora and Indian
Right.
civilization. But you have done it, and at a great cost and sacrifice. Are there any
Yes.
contemporaries like yourself that have studied the East Indians and the Caribbean?
Oh, yeah, yes. There's a lot in Trinidad. There's Dr. Brinzi Samaru, who is most renowned, and a lot of younger people who have come up. But he's a pioneer. He's a forefather. And in the Guyana, you have Clem Seacharan, and recently you have Bituram Ramharak, Dr. Bituram Ramharak, who has recently launched a book on Jong Bahadur Singh,
Right.
and you have a few others. But earlier than that, you had some pioneers in Guyana, whose name I cannot recall now.
So, what has been it like for you to teach in Trinidad and Tobago, given there hasn't been much of a support for this kind of work, but at the same time, you're between academic scholarship and chalking out a livelihood for yourself. And the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, of course, changes with UNC and PNM taking on racial divides. And here you are in the middle trying to resuscitate the important contribution the East Indians in Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean. What was that journey like?
Right. So, being a small society like this, I mean, Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, all of these little islands, almost everybody knows everybody else. So, quite often, not all the time, but quite often, you get a job based not only on your qualification, but by contacts, who you know, who knows you, and that
I
kind of
think more
thing.
who knows you.
Yeah, who knows you. Unlike these big societies like Canada and UK and United States and thing, I think there is more equal opportunity of you getting jobs. So
Right.
when I returned from graduating with a PhD in anthropology, I had to go back to my substantive position of teaching in a high school. So I taught there, and then I got a position in a community college called Costat, and I taught there for quite a few years. And then I got this plum job as assistant professor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, where I stayed for 10 years. Since retrenchment, there are a lot of us who have been retrenched, and in the next few weeks, the third wave of lecturers or professors are going to be retrenched. But I was always wise and took wisdom from other people that you must never have one job. You must always have two jobs, because that one job is really, as a guy told me once in Suriname, that one job is to pay your bills. You have to have a second job that will give you the kind of income to do what you want to do, savings or some leisure, or to build a house or buy land and so on. So from inception, I always had two jobs. Doing as a journalist, for instance, was my second job. And so even when I was in UTT, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, I had established a publishing company, and which is still going. So I do publishing books mainly and magazines, not flyers and posters and so on. These things take too much time and the returns are very small. So I have that publishing company going. And thank God, when I was retrenched, I had no debts. Again, I took that wisdom from the older folks. If you have to build a house, build piece by piece, room by room, you know, and so on, and don't take any loan. I never had any loan because I was building everything cash with my monthly salary, piece by piece, bit by bit, brick by brick. So
It
the
seems like
grow up,
it seems like you've inherited the tradition of our Indian
yes, yes,
ancestors who
definitely,
did likewise, built piece
definitely,
by piece and saved their money under the mattress and
yes, yes.
saw to the education of their children. So tell us a bit more about that. Maybe there was some kind of an influence there.
Well, the early Indians never had faith in banks to put their money in the banks. Probably because they were not literate in English. Probably they had no faith in the banks. But from what I know, yes, they would save their money out of the mattress and so on, but they would invest their money in land, but quite often cows. Because when I do the research, almost every Indian in Trinidad, and I guess other parts in diaspora, had a cow. That was an investment. So you buy cows. From the cows, you're going to get milk, you're going to get manure, and so on, and other byproducts, urine as fertilizer, and so on. And from the cows, you're going to get young ones. So it's really a quick investment, better than putting your money in the bank because you don't get much interest. In fact, you have to pay the bank for safeguarding your money. And so maybe I inherited that saving kind of ethos. And it's why I never really took a loan. Even the land that I bought, thankfully, I bought it from a relative and I would pay the relatives in installments. So not really take a loan. But I
Yeah,
had a big loan to pay though when I was studying at the University of Florida.
right.
I remember I had a menial job as a teaching assistant. I to support myself, I would take credit cards, loans. So when I returned, that was the toughest part of my life when I had to, from the salary I was getting here, convert that to US and pay the credit card company, which I did. You know, it was really a trauma.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
So I would have asked you like what are some of the hurdles you have faced, but you have given us some of those stories
yeah,
already.
yeah.
Are there any other persons in your life, you know, whether it's locally or internationally, spiritually or politically, that has really influenced you throughout your journey and to make such a remarkable contribution, especially for your research, your publishing, you're creating the platform for the East Indians in the Caribbean, which is, given the time that we're living in, you know, this is a time of inclusion and diversity. This is a time of Black Lives Matter. This is a time of anti-racism and fight standing up for justice. And yet still we find that minorities are still suffering at the hands of political injustices, racial injustices, job injustices. So you have created such a platform. Tell us about some of those influencers and heroes.
Well, I think I was influenced in part by a number of people, but I admire V.S. Naipaul
Right.
because he had a focus. He knew he wanted to be a writer from very young. He had the influence of his father, and like me, he went abroad to pursue his career, but he never returned, unlike me. and he made it big, having won the Nobel Prize. I mean, how bigger than that can you get? And he stuck to his guns. Every day he wrote. Every day. And this is my philosophy in life, that you choose a path, you choose a profession, you choose a career, and you pursue it. You eat, breathe, sleep, and dream it. You give everything you have for it. And it is probably one of the reasons I never went into sports, because I knew I was never going to be a good sportsman. Whatever you are doing, you have to try to be the best, world standard,
But you have
be
the height for a
among the best in the
basketballer.
world, because you give it all that you have. Okay, well, probably, but basketball was not much a part of our culture here. It was more cricket.
Wonderful. Focused and keep going ahead. Naipal, it's funny you say that. When I was in India, I visited the ambassador of Trinidad and Tobago in Delhi, and he gave me Naipal's book, The Believer, I think it was, talking about
Yeah,
India.
among the believers. Yeah.
Among the believers. And I
Yeah.
got offended because I was studying Islam then, and he had written about the infidels and about Islam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wrote a stinging letter. I can't remember where I sent it, a response. But of course, Naipaul remains one of our literature and literati, and a laureate Nobel Prize winner from Trinidad and Tobago, representing. Um, some people will take offense to that he doesn't necessarily represent the East Indian of the Caribbean because of his pro-colonial stands on certain issues. But like Walcott or anyone else, we could say the same, right? They moved from the Caribbean and lived in England, and they were influenced by the British. But coming back to yourself, I mean, you made a difference. You actually stayed in Trinidad and Tobago, and you lived the life there and went through the battles. What is it like? Can you share with us today? There are two important questions. One is like, share with us maybe a story or two, or some names, or even some dates of great East Indians in the Caribbean, great contributors to culture, to history, to politics, to science in the Caribbean. Maybe people are not aware of. We hear about Naipaul. He's a giant, and people are aware of him around the world. We hear about Chetty Jagan in Guyana, right? Because of his political stand against the British, or Eric Williams, as a matter of fact, for the Federation of the West Indian Federation. But Neil, give us some examples.
So actually, before the pandemic of COVID, I was going to produce a magazine, which I've been doing for the past 20 years. So I produce 40 editions of a magazine. Every year I do produce a magazine on Diwali, and every year I also do one on Indian Arrival Day, which is like Indian Immigration Day. So
Right.
two magazines I produce every year, and I was in the process of producing Indian Arrival Day when the COVID hit us, and the theme of that magazine was unsung heroes of Trinidad and Tobago. And I started and so on. I got the artists to do the illustrations because I wanted conformity. Couldn't use photographs because they were varying quality. So I got an artist to do the portraits of each of these heroes. So maybe I'll turn it into a book. But yes, there are a lot of people, FEM, who seen, for instance, Sundar Popo, who we know. They're quite a lot. The problem, however, is that you mentioned Black Lives Matter. So uh, for Indians, it's Indian Lives Matter, because what we experience in the Caribbean, Trinidad, Guyana, is black hegemony, black domination in the media, in the popular discourse, and so there is little space for Indian. You don't hear their voices, you don't see them much. So it's not surprising to meet somebody from some part of the world, and they'd be surprised that they're Indians living in Trinidad, in Guyana, in Suriname. Because that reality is not projected. And so this is why I've created this platform to give voice and visibility, give a face, give a point of view to Indians who are the majority ethnic group in Trinidad, in Guyana, and in Suriname. So the platform really is meant to bring these the Indian communities in the Caribbean together, so we could meet every Sunday night and talk about challenges and so on and celebrate ourselves. And in doing that, to also discover ourselves so that we can live peacefully and we can thrive successfully with other ethnic groups, because we were born here, we will die here, our children are born here, they will die here. This is our place. We have to live with other groups. So we are trying to discover ourselves, clarify who we are. And it's only when you know yourself, then you can know others. And it's only then you can forge a good relationship. If you know yourself first, as the Bible said, know thyself first. So this is my mission now to give voice and visibility to this. We are minority in the Caribbean. Nevertheless, although we are the majority in Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, we are minority in the entire Caribbean. Look at Jamaica, Barbados, and so on. So it's really to
So
create
the
a
question
space
that people
for
would pose is that Black Lives Matter is systemic racism that has come from slavery into the civil rights movement, and until today with police brutality, actual people get killed every day. Whereas in the Caribbean, in Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, the racism that has been foisted upon us by the colonial powers and has left us divided during election time, especially, it doesn't warrant the same amount of violence and police police brutality, and it's a different form of
yes, it
racial
is.
violence.
It is. It is more institutionalized.
Right.
But you have the violence in Guyana, a
Yeah.
lot of violence. They had the Henry boys recently,
Yeah.
being killed, and then there was a retaliation with some little teenager and all of that. So I am scared to go to Guyana, because it's a place that is always boiling and can explode anytime. It's there under the surface. It's it's steaming. The lid can just blow off the pot any minute. And unlike Trinidad and Suriname, we never had that violence, except in 1960s in Trinidad. When you had Capeleo and the DLP and so on, you had some little skirmishes during the campaign. But thankfully, we have never had that violence in Trinidad, um, as you have in Guyana, because I'm working on a project in that Wisna massacre
Yeah.
in Guyana, 1964, something like that. I've collected all the material, but time, like you, I guess, experience, time is the biggest hindrance. How do we find the time to do all of that? So
I
there
have a good
is,
friend here in Canada who has written about it because he's now a justice in the criminal court here in Toronto. But he actually lived in Winsma, and he witnessed that,
okay.
and he has he has published actually extensively on the Winsma. So I will
Oh,
connect you with him. Yeah.
yes, please do, because I've gone there and I've done interviews with people and taken photographs and videotapes. So I've done all the field work already to do this project. So that's on the cards, like so many other projects, but time is of essence.
Well, you're such a prolific writer, and you have a voluminous taste for history and academia, and you also make it socially acceptable, I could say, because for majority of people, it's the small bites of the truth that will help them to digest and to avoid the falsity that is propelled by these political figures, as we've seen in the winning of Joe Biden in the States. What hegemony has passed there in the name of politics. Do you have the same feeling about the recent elections in Guyana?
Well, in all these in Trinidad, the parties are race based. In Guyana is the same. And in Suriname, all of the parties are ethnic based. You have about 9 parties there. So no one party can form the government in Suriname. They have to form a coalition, as is the case with Santoki, who has been the new president there. By the way, we should congratulate Suriname today. Today is a historic day because they are celebrating the 45th um, anniversary of independence from the Netherlands. They got
Yeah.
independence in 1975. And today is the 45th anniversary. So we must give them a shout out.
Yeah, happy Independence Day to all the Surinamis in the house, and of course, winning the independence from the Dutch
Netherlands. Yeah.
Netherlands was an important step
Yes.
in seeing self-autonomy and self-determination in Suriname. And we must not forget that Suriname, like French Guyana, were all one Guyana.
Yes.
British Guyana, Dutch Guyana,
Yeah.
and French Guyana until it was divided. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, yes. So there's the ethnic politics there, and I believe, in fact, I want to do some research and write a paper on this. I don't believe we the, we have this electoral system, political system that winner takes all. So imagine you can win a constituency, a seat by one vote, one person voted in your favor, and you win that, and you have all the power in
Proportional representation. Yeah.
proportional representation. And I think that system has to change because they're
And it's funny, that the British do not have that system. They left that behind.
Yeah, yeah. So we ought to have a shared governance system.
Yes.
Because you cannot lose an election by one seat and you are in opposition for 5 years and you are powerless.
Yes.
And sometimes you may well win the popular vote. There's the popular vote that you may win but lose the election.
Yes.
Yet you are powerless. So some kind of mechanism has to be worked out in which there's shared governance and everybody feels a part of the government and everybody can
Well, isn't that,
participate.
when you talk about shared governance, doesn't that remind you back of the tradition of our East Indian ancestors who had the panchayat system?
Yes, but the panchayat was a more court, informal court system. So instead of going to the magistrate court and the jury and so on, they had the panchayat, panch meaning 5, and they would adjudicate and so on village matters, which by the way, I see in an Indian movie that I look at on Sundays. So we have to find some kind of formula. Otherwise, people will feel alienated as the Indians are in Trinidad now, and as the blacks are in Suriname. Not in Suriname because they have formed alliance there, but yes, to some extent. And the blacks are feeling disenfranchised in Guyana, and I don't think they would rest peacefully. I think they will always agitate and protest and so on because they have been left out of the decision-making process.
Yeah.
Well,
the parliamentary system is adversary, right?
Yes.
It's not like the panchayat or what we call in Arabic the shura system, where you work for the collective good despite of a difference of opinion. But coming back to the question that people have posed is that East Indians in the Caribbean have really borrowed culture from Bollywood and from India, from Pakistan, from Saudi Arabia, from wherever. They don't have their own authentic, grounded culture. Unlike the Afro-Caribbean, they have their own authentic Caribbean culture, whether it's carnival, mashramani, whether it's music, reggae, soca, food, clothing, and it goes on and on. It seems that we are seen as borrowing a culture rather than establishing an authentic Caribbean Indian culture.
Right. So as an anthropologist, I think I can make a sound evaluation of that. Um, you have carnivals all over the world. right? Brazil and so on. And in France, actually, it was brought from France to Trinidad. And the early calypsos were sung in patois. It wasn't in English. So they adapted and modified and appropriated it to give it their stamp and their flavor. And so too with the Indians. The Indians have drawn from the traditional culture and have created things that are new, like our roti. The roti that we make here is not the roti that you'll find in India. And we have created something like the doubles. So we have created our own. The tassa, for instance, which you find in the Hussein in Muharram. Yes, you have tassa. I have seen it in Mauritius. I have seen it in India. But the ansam and the beats and so on, the way we play it, and that janj and so on, those musical pieces coming together, it is really a creation of Trinidad, but yet drawing from that traditional culture, just as the calypso, right? Because you had the I can't recall the name now, but you had something similar to the calypso in Africa, and yes, they have done more. They have created more from the steel pan and so on. We have never created an instrument, though there is contention that we have created the dantal, that metal rod, that percussion instrument. But we have created the chutney, and the food. The food has become national. Curry is everywhere. If you go to Jamaica, the national dish is curry goat, and you find roti everywhere. And the doubles and so on. It's mainly in the domain of cuisine and food and so on that Indian culture really is prevalent. Not much in the music, except for the chutney. But even in the temples, we have adapted, because traditionally, when Hindus go to the temples, they would sit on the floor. Now they sit on chairs and benches, which are fashioned after the church and so on, and they have the Sunday morning service. So they have adapted in a lot of ways, and there's Jandi flags and so on in front of every household. You hardly see it in India. So in a way, we have refashioned and recreated and given the traditional culture our stamp and our flavor, to make it in a way Caribbean. So we have, and even when we haven't refashioned it and recreated it, we have retained it a lot, because the Muharram procession, which you have in Trinidad, it's not performed in Guyana at all, because it was outlawed in Guyana because of the lobby by the Sunni Muslim group. And I am not sure if it's in Suriname, though I've never heard about it, but I have to inquire. So we have a lot of things that are unique to the entire Western Hemisphere. The Muharram procession being one, with the tassa drums and so on, the processions.
Yeah, the Hussein festival in St. James.
Yeah, in St. James.
And I used to enjoy that, because when I was traveling back sometime on Caribbean Airlines, on the Caribbean Beats magazine, there's always a well captured article.
Yeah, it's in the national calendar.
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, the question is not only about the festivals, whether Hindu or Muslim, but what about Christians as well? Because the way we celebrate Christmas in the Caribbean, and East Indians, of course, celebrating Christmas starting from Diwali. Even in Toronto, I know that sometimes we have Eid, Diwali, and Christmas falling the same time, and we do like a joint celebration.
Oh yes.
But the proselytization of the East Indians is
that is a creation of the Caribbean.
The proselytization of what about the proselytization of the East Indians by the church?
It's ongoing.
Isn't that a huge challenge for East Indians?
Yes, it's ongoing. It's for decades, for generations. You didn't catch that. There was a little.
Yeah. What about the proselytization that started with the colonial powers and continues until today? Isn't that seen as an attack upon the Indian tradition, Indian culture, Indian religion?
Loop there. I think we had some little difficulty there.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you. What about the proselytization of
Yeah,
the
we had a little
Indians?
glitch there. Yes, so it is ongoing, relentless, never ending. From a little child, I would know that this Jehovah Witness would come at your door week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation, and attempt their mission is to convert Muslims and Hindus. So you find a lot of in Trinidad, as in other Caribbean, a lot of Pastor Muhammad and Pastor Aziz and so on, Pastor Maharaj and so on is common. So that's ongoing, but it's a book that I am doing called Cultural Resistance. And those of us who have remained Hindus and Muslims, I think it's remarkable. People should congratulate us because we have withstood that onslaught. We have withstood that onslaught because that onslaught is in the form of, in every form, in person, at your door, at your gate, in your office. It's also in the radio. It's also on the television. It has taken a global dimension because if people like us who have cable television, we have 99 channels. It's 97 of them on a Sunday morning that will be preaching to you with the objective of converting you. So those of us who have remained Hindus and Muslims and the Orisha, that traditional African religion, I think they are to be highly commended. And so I'm doing a book called Cultural Resistance.
Cultural resistance, like Rasta resistance by Asif Ali.
Yes, resistance to that
I
onslaught.
love that. Even the Rastafarian, they have
Yes,
been
yes,
criminalized
yeah,
for a
yeah,
long time, but they have a religion of their own.
right.
But finally, Dr. Kumar Mahabir, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
What do
It's a
you
pleasure.
see the future looks like for East Indians in the Caribbean, given their contribution in politics, in science, in education, in culture, in music, in cuisine, but not enough female East Indian scholars on the forefront of the world, it seems like.
Well, that is two things, good and bad, positive and negative. When you look at all the scholarships, when you look at the people who are excelling in education, it's the girls, it's the women. I mean, I taught at the medical school in Mount Hope, UE, a section of UE. And even up to today, 95% of the student doctors are females, and the lawyers and so on. I think it's global. The boys, the men are not doing well. It's the women who are excelling. So that whole gender gap, gender ceiling, it's going to shatter and break um, because of the numbers. With respect to the future of Indians, it depends on the politics and it depends on the government. And as in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a Afro-led government that uses the politics and uses the culture as a campaign tool. And so Indians are marginalized, and that can be clearly seen and brought out when, with respect to the funding. And I believe that is the best marker. It's objective, it's empirical. Look at the government funding for Indian Arrival Day compared to Emancipation Day. Because you have to compare like with like, apples to apples. They are historical holidays. You cannot compare Emancipation Day to Diwali or Eid. You cannot compare Indian Arrival Day to Diwali or Eid. Historical days, Indian Arrival Day should be compared to Emancipation Day. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Emancipation Day gets $3 million. In Trinidad and Tobago, Indian Arrival Day may get $500,000 or $1 million in the time of Kamala Prasad Bisesa when she was prime minister, but never equivalent. So it's all about politics. It's all about ethnic politics, and the politics will determine whether we get equality. I'm fighting for equality. That's all I want. I don't want Indians oppress any group and disadvantage any group, be racist to any group, be prejudicial against any group. It's equality, equal opportunity. I would like a society in which everybody is treated equally.
That's wonderful. My final question is that we work so hard to pride ourselves with the East Indian identity, but we know for a fact that the Indians in India keep looking at us in the diaspora as outcasts, and we do not belong. I lived in India, so I could tell you that the concept of the Kala Pani applies so much as to a foreigner who's an Indian visiting India, that you're still not accepted, even if you find your roots.
So we have lessons to teach India. We have lessons. They have to learn from us. For one, we have gotten rid of the caste system. There's nothing like chamar and all these different castes that you have, untouchables and so on, and all of these groupings that you have. We have gotten rid of that, and there are Indians and Muslims, sorry, Hindus and Muslims live cordially, right? There are a lot of intermarriages. They have negotiated and so on. So it's quite typical in a household to see that the husband is Hindu and the woman is Muslim, and they support each other for Diwali, for Eid, and so on. They have negotiated these little challenges that they have had. And I live in. Let me give my example here. I'm in San Juan, which is, by the way, a Spanish name. My brother-in-law is Muslim. My sister's husband. We have Muslims in the neighborhood. We all celebrate Eid, right? Because
Yes.
for Eid they all go. Unless
Of course, I
Hawaiian,
know that's a lively. El Socorro Street is a lively street with the Chinese
yeah.
restaurant and the Nur
And
Islam
for
Mosque and the
Diwali, yeah,
double
yeah,
store across the road.
right. And for Diwali, we share food. So culture has to be
And there's
shared.
a whole
Religion is to
street
be
in
shared.
Chaguanas where Muslims and Hindus together light it up for Diwali.
Felicity, yes, yes.
Felicity, yeah.
So we have a lot to teach. We have a lot to teach India. India has to learn from us. We
I
don't
love
have
it.
that animosity and so on.
We have a lesson to share with the world. It's a beautiful multicultural lesson
Yeah,
to share with the
yeah,
world. I
yeah.
thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure
You're
talking to
welcome.
you.
Yeah,
Dr. Kumar Mahabir, anthropologist, Trinidad and Tobago, and professor, researcher on East Indian diaspora in the Caribbean. He has been gracious to spend his time with us this evening. And you can catch him every Sunday night. Check him on
yes.
Facebook, Kumar Mahabir, and the Caribbean
Indo-Caribbean
Cultural
Cultural
Center.
Center. Yeah, yeah.
Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. Also, his publications. I have shared that on before, the Indo-Caribbean publications. And I would like to say also on behalf of the Pakaraima Writers Association here in Toronto, from Janet Naidu and the other writers, that we are very grateful for you and your work and for knowing you. And
Thank
we hope
you.
that we can continue this partnership.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
Namaste, Shanti, Shalom, and peace be each and every one of
Thank you.
you. And
Yeah.
those who join us tonight from YouTube and Facebook, I'm sorry if you couldn't log on. We'll be sharing the link later on, but you could catch us. This is our weekly webinar, Your Story, A Mercy to Humanity. It started during the COVID-19 when we started the Table of Mercy, giving out the hampers. And we have been able to interview almost 100 personalities around the world. Christmas is coming up. It's the holiday season, and with the pandemic and the lockdown, it's very hard. Kindly do your best to reach out to each other and show some love. show some kindness and share what you could share with others who do not have, so that we can have a better year ahead of us. Thank you. And I will ask Dr. Kumar if he has any religious prayer, bhajan, poem, sentiment to share with us. I will give.
May I
I will
interrupt
ask him
one
to
moment?
be for his final words. And yeah, you would like to say something?
I asked a question in the chat. Can you get him to answer it?
I am not. The webinar Zoom is not working well. Right, it's flashing, so I can't see. So you'll have to read it out.
Can he emphasize a little bit on the interracial marriages between Indians and the African community? There was once someone that said that we will be a Douglas population go forward in the near future. What is his thoughts on that?
Okay.
Okay, so good. What are my thoughts? So the individuals are free to choose. Love has no boundaries, and people are increasingly, day after day, falling in love across religious and racial lines. The number of mixed group is increasing, so it's inevitable, and but I want equality, and I don't believe that people should sacrifice their identity. If one is a Hindu or Muslim and marries somebody of other faith, I believe in negotiation. I believe, as Derek Walcott has said, who is also mixed, uh, he told me once, I was lucky to be in a workshop, that we are so lucky in the Caribbean to have these various historical and ethnic and cultural streams that we should draw from all of them. Why deny one and accept the other? We must tap into all. We are lucky. We are very fortunate in the Caribbean to have French influence, Spanish influence, British influence, Dutch influence, right? And we must, and of course, our own Indian and African and so on. And we must draw from all of these, take the best, and celebrate all. That's what I believe. Celebrate Eid, celebrate Diwali, celebrate Christmas, and so on, which is what we do.
Lovely. So would that mean an extinction of the East Indian race?
No, never. Because people like to marry their own. They have preferences for their own because of common cultural traits. I don't see anything wrong in a Muslim wanting to marry a Muslim. Then you don't have to negotiate, and there won't be any challenges and so on. I don't see anything wrong that one group has preference for marrying their own. But of course, the world is what it is. All those Guyanese and Trinidadians who have migrated abroad to North America and the UK and so on, look at the children who they are marrying. It's inevitable. And you got to accept, and I believe in celebrating the best, drawing the best. Don't be ashamed of your culture, don't be ashamed of your heritage and so on. Know it. If you don't know it, learn about it, practice it, because we are living in a global village, and increasingly so. With the technology, for instance, look at this forum where you are physically located and where I'm physically located. So we are not apart. We are getting closer and closer to knowing each other and living with each other.
Well, the person who's asked me the question is a good example of multiculturalism. Her father was a Pandit and she's a Muslim.
Yeah, you see, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, Any other questions? I cannot see you because my screen is flashing. You could say it. Alima, would you like to offer some words to Dr. Kumar? Because Alima, we interviewed her before. She was stuck in Trinidad and Tobago during the pandemic. Now she's back in Guyana, and she's an amazing contributor to East Indian culture, you could say, in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Guyana, around the world. Alima, unmute yourself and share some words of wisdom with us. All right. So I will let you go, Dr. Kumar. That's it.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
and
a
have a
pleasure.
good night.
It was a pleasure. Yeah. Okay, great.
Bye.
Thank you.